pleasure to greet you with wishes for this year to be much better, more sociable and successful. And I would like to announce the start of a webinar on Contraceptive Counselling 2022 as a focused approach to improve women's quality of life. You will have the opportunity to listen to two remarkable lectures and then to get answers to questions you send us in the meantime. At the beginning, let me introduce you the team involved in the realization of this webinar. First, I would list our lecturers, Massimo Lombardo and Teresa Bombas, then moderators, Professor Emeritus Johannes Bitzer from University Hospital in Basel, who is editor-in-chief of the European Journal of Contraception and Reproductive Health Care, and myself, Katarina Sedlecky, as well as Peter Erhard and Nancy Habels from the ESC Central Office, who are, although behind the scene, invaluable support for performing all the activities of the society. Oh, excuse me, just a moment. This webinar is part of the activities of that European Society of Contraception and Reproductive Health organizes to contribute to professional development of doctors, nurses, residents, counselors, students, and others who are dedicated to improve contraceptive care and share relevant knowledge and clinical experience. And indeed, we would like to invite you to become a member of the European Society of Contraception and enjoy a number of benefits, such as free editions of the European Journal of Contraception and Reproductive Health Care, newsletters, free access to webinars, reduced Congress registration fees, possibility of becoming the member of the board of directors, and access to interactive forums like Doc Matter. And you can apply by linking to the web address listed on this slide. There are also benefits if similar international or national European associations or institutions apply for affiliation to the ESC. And we would also like to invite you to the 16th Congress of the European Society of Contraception that would be held in May 2022 in Ghent, Belgium. The theme of the Congress is Challenging Times, Are We Ready? Novel Approaches to Sexual and Reproductive Health. This will be a hybrid event comprising both an in-person conference and sessions in live streaming. This Congress would be the great opportunity to learn on a number of themes, innovate clinical experience and scientific knowledge, make contacts with colleagues, as well as to obtain continuous medical education credits. So if you are interested in attending this Congress, now is the right time for you and your colleagues to register at reduced rates for ESC members, non-medical doctors, trainees, and residents. You should know that a special convenience is the possibility to switch registration to online or vice versa, depending on epidemiological situation and other factors. Furthermore, you are welcome to send an abstract for the Congress, having in mind a multidisciplinary approach. So the deadline for the abstract is very soon. It is 31st January 2022. ESC offers its members the opportunity to use Doc Matter community as a valuable tool for sharing ideas and knowledge, discussing individual cases, clinical and ethical issues, educating colleagues, and discovering and critically evaluating medical data, knowledge, and technologies related to contraception and sexual and reproductive health. So we invite you to use DocMatter, but if you are not yet a member and still you are interested in accessing the DocMatter community, please email to info@escrh.eu. Current discussion areas are really broad and numerous and include also access to reproductive health services, as you see, the impact of COVID-19 on patient care, as well as contraception, ovarian and breast cancers, patient education and remote consultations, and some cases, questions and emerging evidence. And now some practical instructions. I suppose that many of you will have questions related to the lectures. To send them, you should activate a question and answer button, write a question in appropriate space, and then click on the Q&A button. Additionally, if you agree or would like to highlight some question that somebody else had already written, you can upvote it by clicking on thumbs up sign. So questions will be answered after both lectures, and speakers will answer many of your questions, I believe, but some questions may remain unanswered due to lack of time, and then these questions will be addressed and added to the ESC website. And now I have the pleasure to announce the first lecture entitled, "It is a Women's Choice, New Challenges in Contraceptive Advice." The speaker is Massimo Lombardo. He is a freelance journalist for medical issues and a healthcare provider in the clinic Sintragin. However, his main work is being a chief executive officer of a national expert advisory board called Intra Germany. So Massimo, please, the floor or the screen is yours.
Dear Katarina, thank you very much for this beautiful introduction. This is beautiful to be here today. And let's have a look here. Okay. And like you already said, thank you very much for the introduction. Dear ladies and gentlemen, hello from Munich here in Germany. It's a great honor for me to speak today to such an extraordinary audience. I also want to mention the great work of the ESC, like you already heard, and thank you for this invitation today. For many years now, I'm following the outstanding work of this association and can invite everybody to be part of this. And today, having the opportunity to participate with my speech to this continuous effort of this society is such a great pleasure and honor. Probably I would have chosen a different approach to this topic as you would be normally used to, but it would be my great pleasure to invite you to follow me on this in the next 20 minutes. I have the pleasure to lecture for many societies from time to time. However, there is certainly no conflict of interests in this time. I'm speaking today to you as a real European citizen, Italian by heart, but living and working in Munich as a gynecologist, and I'm also a journalist for medical issues and consultant for various companies. But my major field of activity is being at the head of a national association of experts called Intra Germany. Intra Germany is actually trying to move the topic of contraception advice more into the focus of general interest. We are trying to do that as a high specialist group of experts across Germany collecting real-time data. The data is presented to enrich the standards nationally and internationally. In addition to that, we develop materials for students in universities. The question could be, why do we need a new approach in counseling? While the corona pandemic is the biggest challenge ever, the overall depression level is rising and the personal pursuit of happiness can be suppressed and therefore doesn't allow us to live up to the fullest. Taking this into consideration, you might think contraceptive counseling could be less important. Dear colleagues, I don't think so at all, because in our day-to-day work, contraceptive advice actually plays a central role in today's society, because it's the ability to separate reproductivity and sexuality that allows women to reach the position they would like to have in today's society. Only through this separation, which we enable through our advice, our society can be what we want it to be today. Let's not forget that only this control of the reproductivity will give all options for action that are needed to combine the professional and family desires according to the needs of the women today. It is our fascinating task to be able to take part in this social issue, and it is our professional competence that should allow women to continue now and in the future to be able to have equal rights and equal opportunities worldwide. I would like to show you in the following slides that women have already started to change. For example, when I was a child, living together without being married was unthinkable. Meanwhile, there are many women who consciously want to become a mother, but no longer want a man. Certainly because they don't want to fight the needs of a man or the society, but also because they want to set the pace themselves. Dear gentlemen, we have already entered a new era. You could say it's a woman's choice, but in truth, it's a woman's world. We can see that in simple things, such as higher school education. We can clearly see that over the years, I have data from Norway here, the proportion of women has consistently outnumbered men in universities, and in contrast to male students, the females have been steadily increased more and more. In 2020, about 4 million babies were born in the European Union, a continuous decrease over the years. So women are therefore having significantly less children than in the past 20 years. In our German register, you can see that the per capita birth in Germany have declined significantly in the last 80 years and have now reached a statistical minimum of 0.8 per capita. What also really changed is the average age of women when they walk.
Dear speaker, I'm apologies to interrupt you. Can it be that you are not moving forward in your slides?
I'm so sorry. To be sincere, on my screen it's moving forward.
Not on the screen of the.
Not on the screen in yours. Okay, wait. Mm-hmm. So this is the actual moment we are now. I try again. I'm very sorry.
Not a problem.
Do you see the slides now?
Now we see the slides starting with average age of marriage.
You see the slides of average age of marriage. Okay.
Now we see the one with birth control in the middle.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I don't know where the problem is, to be sincere.
We see slide number 7.
You see slide number 7, but when I start the, you can't see the, now you see slide number 7, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't see slide number 8. No.
No.
I'm sorry, I don't know what the problem is. It's a technical problem. I would go on with this here. Maybe we can manage it like this here. Sometimes it's a problem with Zoom. I don't know why. So I'm really sorry to the audience. Excuse me. Let's go on with my lecture. I was talking about the birth and the birth per capita in German, and now I arrived to the average of the age when the girls get married. So this is slide number 13. I would proceed here if it's okay. What also really changes the average of age, like I said, when they walk down the aisle. So this is more than 6 years later than in the past. So in Germany, you can see the average age is 32.1. And when I have a look to the north, I see that the average age is 32.6 as in Germany. And when I look to the south from Germany, so to my home country, I can see the average age of the Italian women is 32.8. So at the first mention, this is not a an effect of the countries, but is seen all over. And if we look at Britain and their enthusiasm of getting married has ebbed and flowed over the last centuries, like you can see in this slide, with a notable low over the past decade. Here, the subservient of the Queen have less and less desire to enter into a similar relationship. As you can clearly see in Germany, where fewer and fewer have married in the last 40 years, the trend can be seen everywhere and not only in some nations. Another point where you can see that the social position of women and the associated with separation from sexuality and reproductivity is the increasing number of working women over the past years. Clearly, you can see in this beautiful statistic from Belgium that men are still the part of the population that are more likely to be employed, but we can also see that the percentage of men has remained at the same, while the percentage of women has increased continuously. In another exciting fact, in Germany, France, Spain, and Italy, like in most of the European countries now, we see a larger female than male population. What we can learn from all this data and facts for our daily work, in practical terms, the everyday life of women has changed in recent decades. The time when contraception has to take place changed, and the moment when they want to become a mother is much later. The relationships are also different than they were 50 years ago. The terms of contraception is facing completely new challenges. When I first started 50 years ago, I thought I knew what the female population would be asking for, what would be asking me for, and what their needs regarding contraception device would be. The more I learned about the topic, the more I realized that I actually knew very little about the other side. Coincidentally, I watched the famous movie What Woman Wants, starring Mel Gibson and Helen Hunt, a great film, by the way. In this film, Mel Gibson, as a womanizer who thought he knew exactly what women wanted and what they needed, due to certain circumstances, a slap on the head, Hollywood makes it possible, suddenly he's able to hear exactly what women are really thinking. And all of a sudden, he realized that he knew nothing. I could strongly relate to this situation and was as surprised as he was, unfortunately, without this womanizer thing. So I started to question, is it just me, or is it a general misunderstanding? And that's why I took a closer look on how a specific industry deals with contraception and contraceptive advice. This industry is known for examining its target group very closely and their needs very, very early, and definitely also creates these needs themselves, the advertising industry, I mean. My research showed that women like shopping, use cosmetics, they love to cook, they constantly need another pair of shoes. Cleaning the household is constantly an important topic. But even if sexual related topics would come up from time to time, it was never about the topic of contraception. And this is really surprising to me, because in Germany, for example, we are talking about the daily needs of around about 17.5 million women that have not been taken into account by this industry a day. Every day, 17.5 million. And we are not talking about a small percentage of women, but in fact, almost 70% of all women aged 15 to 49. What does this mean for us HCPs? We fulfill our university education and learn a lot about every kind of cancer and its treatment, as well as chemotherapy and other drugs. We learn how hormones work together and operate breasts and uterus perfectly and monitor them with ultrasound. However, we come into contact with the topic of contraception, and many of us are completely lost. And women came to us and asked for contraception that is safe, that does not affect the natural cycle, and furthermore has a positive impression on their everyday life, such as a positive influence on their menstruation. And last but not least, they don't want hormones or interaction with other drugs. And often they see me in my practice and already decided themselves how to proceed and stop taking their hormones. And for me, surprisingly, they say that they feel better, they are happier, they feel stronger, their migraine is gone, and suddenly also the libido is back, all the things she complained before. So I started to look into literature myself to see what other data is given. And in this context, the Tango study, so think about needs in contraception, should be mentioned first. Here, healthcare providers and the patients attending the contraceptive counseling were invited to complete online questionnaires. The women survey explored knowledge and use of contraceptive methods, satisfaction with current methods, and interest in receiving more information about all methods. Healthcare providers' views were gathered in parallel, so the same, so to speak. And the first thing I realized was a mismatch in viewing the real-time situation. It turns out, as you can see here on this slide, that, for example, about 50% of the patients were satisfied with the information they got from their doctor. To be fair, we have to say that 50% of them wanted still more information. However, what frightens, you see it on the right side. Here, 75% to the HCPs thought that they did a very good job. This shows a clear discrepancy in perception. So we know that women in Tango study were generally very satisfied with the current method and the counseling, but the study showed there is a mismatch between what women want to know and what we think women want to know. HCPs consistently underestimate women's interests in receiving information about different options. So 60% of women reported interest in receiving more regular or extensive information about various methods, and HCPs estimated that only 46% of the patients were interested in more information and on different methods. What were the results in Tango? Despite high levels of use and satisfaction with current methods, women were interested in receiving more information about all contraceptive methods. Greater exploration of women's views on the needs and expectations of contraception could lead to increased knowledge, more effective discussions with healthcare providers, and the greater likelihood of informed contraceptive choice. Another great study is the COCO study, so contraceptive counseling. A total of around about 100 gynecologists and almost 1,200 women participated. Yeah? And before counseling, the study showed that only 1/3 of women were very satisfied with the current contraceptive method, also only 1/3 of the women. There was a substantial increase in satisfaction with the current contraceptive method during the study due to the counseling. The number of women reporting they were very satisfied with the contraceptive method increased by 30% only through the counseling. Using a structured approach to share information tailored to women's needs can help them to choose from a broader range of methods and, in some cases, change to a method more suitable to their individual needs and ultimately increase satisfaction with the choice. Let's look again at the Tango study that was carried out in 2015 and look a little between the lines. If we look at the wish list of contraception, what contraception should do for women, we see that contraception safety, followed by drug interaction, and less painful bleedings play a leading role. Now, follow me on the next slide. And now let us compare the Tango with the COCO study that took place exactly 4 years later, and with similar question. You can see the desire for high safety and natural cycle has not diminished and has remained stable on a high level. But if you look to the right, you realize that the demand for estrogen-free contraception has increased from 11 to 60% in only 4 years, ladies and gentlemen. So the wish list is actually quite clear. Safety, naturalness, and estrogen-free are clearly on it. That's the wish list, but what happened in daily life? Doctors have the greatest influence, like we know, on women's choice of contraceptive method and are most likely to suggest contraceptive pill or male condoms. Although women's contraceptive needs change and they tell us that up to 36% of contraceptive pill users were likely to change their method within 12 months, but nothing happens. The choice of availability contraceptive methods has increased in recent years. However, recent data on women's awareness of methods and reasons for their method choice or reasons for changing methods is limited. But the trend clearly shows that women no longer just listen to doctors' recommendations, but go their own way. In this slide, you can clearly see how the youngest in the age 14 to 21 have behaved in Germany in the recent years. You can see in the years 15 to 20 how many prescriptions were made for pills, and one can clearly see that fewer and fewer women wanted such a prescription. This trend is also visible in the two studies already presented. Within 4 years, 20% fewer wanted a systemic contraception, and condom use, like you can see, has more than doubled in the same period. But what happens next to the fact that the women may pave the way for themselves? What is the worst case scenario we have to handle with? Between 15 and 19, in the same period, an average of 64 out of 1,000 women worldwide had an unplanned pregnancy each year. That corresponds to 121 million pregnancies annually. It's an incredible number. And the German data shows a 3 years high of nearly 110,000 medical induced abortions. This is the German data. I've already talked a lot about the fact that it seems to be a current development that women are less and less satisfied with the advice of doctors and are always looking for their own way. A closer look at the data in Germany shows that a special generation, namely the transition between Generation X and the millennials, represent a game change. Apparently, the new generations are no longer willing to endure unwanted pregnancies like previous generation may have done, and are increasingly opting for medical abortions. The question that is now in the room is, of course, what can we do? In order to break this trend to be better understood and to better understand, we need to change our approach to patients. It's not about what we think is the best, but about what women's needs are. Choosing a contraceptive method is a highly individual decision, requiring counseling to help women clarify their needs and identify about which available options match their preferences. Let us not forget that women who come to our counseling are better informed than ever before. They have access to almost infinite databases. They use the latest technologies, and everyone is able to make their own decision-making thoughts through social media. People, and especially women, have never been better informed about their own health and their bodies than they are today. This means that the women we face are equal counseling partners that are looking for our professional medical expertise to make their own decision. But unfortunately, there is another aspect. One of our biggest challenges is that women don't always tell us everything they suffer from. Also because it is not possible for them to connect certain symptoms or problems with a possible contraceptive therapy due to the lack of professional competence. So it is that over 20% of women don't tell us about their worries about side effects. Suffering in silence can have a significant impact on their lives. For example, women with dysmenorrhea report reduction in sleep quality, or 4 out of 10 women, for example, report a reduction in social or sporting activities, and many other things. So we have to be able to deal with two main factors. On the one hand, we have to learn what the demand and wishes of our patients really are, since the living conditions have changed completely in the recent years. For this, it will be important to look for new wording and new approaches in counseling, possibly by using new ways like the social media. On the other hand, we have to listen very carefully and be prepared to take the fears and worries that are expressed by the girls continuously and that are clearly showed up in the studies and translate them into new recommendations. The major problem identified were the low level, or let's say lack of training of professionals, our lack in the knowledge of current family planning methods, the lack of sex education in schools, and the high level of induced abortions. Therefore, we should work on being able to address the patients in a more understandable and direct way. There should be clear wording and straight strategy for this. We should act like a profiler. First, you should find out which kind of person is actually sitting in front of you. And in the second step, you should find out what needs need to be met. We call this medical profiling and patient's orientation. Medical profiling can be carried out quickly. With these 6 simple questions, you can identify contraceptive needs and create an opportunity for women to raise their individual concerns. If you try these 6 questions, you will be able to discover the needs quickly and enable the woman to deal with her worries. Please try it out. It's really easy and very effective. In the next step, the wording plays a central role. We took too long trying to explain to women what contraceptive methods are made of. And we have now started to simply explain to women where contraception takes place. Does it take place in the entire system or only locally? This simple subdivision enables the patients to understand in a relatively short time which system or what influence the contraceptive method has on her body, and can compare this to her concerns and wishes in order to make a proper contraception decision according to her own wishes. Using a structured approach to share information tailored to women's needs can help to choose from a broader range of methods and, in some cases, change to a method more suitable to their individual needs and ultimately increase satisfaction with their choice. In this way, we can win back the trust of the patients and give them the security that the methods they are looking for not only meets their wishes, but also, due to a lower rate of discontinuation of the chosen method, less likely to lead to unwanted pregnancies and the resulting side effects on them personally and on the society as well. I would like to end this lecture with an old saying from my Italy. We say that if you want to sweeten a coffee, it's not enough to pour sugar in it. You also have to steer it. So, my dear colleagues, let's steer together the world turning probably. Thank you very much for your attention, and excuse me for the technical problems we had. Maybe I give back to Katarina.
Dear Massimo, thank you for a very nice presentation. And I think that our problem with slides is resolved. And some participants would like to see your slides afterwards, but they will have that opportunity on the ESC website. And now I have the pleasure to announce the second speaker. It is our dear colleague, Teresa Bombas. She's a medical doctor, a gynecologist from the University of Coimbra. And I would like really to, she's a counselor, and also she is the member of the education committee, scientific and education committee of the European Society of Contraception, but you can also see all her very great affiliations here on this slide. So Teresa, the screen is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katarina. I hope that everyone are seeing my slides. Is that okay? Peter, is that okay? The slides? Okay.
We can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for this invitation. It's an honor to be present. Thank you, Massimo, for your nice presentation. Very emotive. It's my duty now to speak about dispelling myths on contraception. This is my declaration of interests. And all my life, I realized that the contraception and the period and the pill was make a lot of the difference in the story of the woman and the woman in life and in the society. This is a photo from Portugal in the 60s. Now the things are completely different, and the woman in my country, like in other European countries, have the chance of having the number of the pregnancy and the number of the children when they want, and the number what they want. And this is made a lot of difference. But when you look at the world, of course, if you look at Europe, we see that the prevalence of using contraception is very high in some of the countries, but we can find European countries in different speeds. We find countries where unmet needs in contraception are very high, and the efficacy of contraceptive counseling is not so good. So in a global way, we can say that there's a difference between countries in policies, in laws, in the system, in the number of contraceptives that are in the markets. But of course, in an individual level, we can say that one of the barriers to access of contraception, it's about counseling. And how Massimo have already said to us, counseling, we have two topics in counseling. It's about the provider's knowledge, and it's about woman needs and women's information. And of course, the society is quite different, and we have the literacy is increasing in some group of the women. They have a lot of information, and some of the information are clear and is well and clarified, but another kind of information is not clarified. And when you look at the news, we have already very bad information. And we know that, in fact, times to times there are coming new notice to the media that that make the woman very worried about the contraceptive that they are using and stopped contraception, and the level of unplanned pregnancy will increase and the level of abortion will increase. I think all of us know and learning with this model that Johannes Bitzer, that is with us, is discussing with us in different meetings. But I will not go in detail, because all of us try to make this model very effective. And I will focus on information and education of risk counseling. So make the numbers clear, make the information clear, and use the language proper to the woman, not a medical language, but you can use the right language, or you can go to other kind of models to have a good counseling depending of the age of the woman or the group of the woman. So I will discuss these that are not really myths, but sometimes they are misconception of the providers. And we are discussing in this meeting contraception for young, the thromboembolic risk, the impact on the mood of hormonal contraception, and the impact on weight of hormonal contraception. So it's clear, maybe it's clear for us that are working mainly in family planning, but it's not clear yet for every providers that contraception is safe and we can start after the first rule. So it's a need. Sometimes it's a need for to prevent unplanned pregnancy, but we can think as a medication for quality of life of the adolescent, decrease dysmenorrhea, decrease the blooding loss during the menstruation, and increase the quality of life. So it's safe, and age itself is not a contraindication to start a method. Of course, when you look for contraception in young, and what we want is that the young people using long-acting methods, because they are much more effective, but it's not what we want as provider, but what the young people could use or decide to use. So counseling is very important. And maybe the people that are usually work with adolescents, it's clear that we can use all kinds of methods, but in some kind of communities, it's not clear. In countries like mine, where the family planning is mainly done by family doctors, there are some misconception about some kind of methods during adolescence. One of these methods is about intrauterine devices. We know that now we have enough data to say that it's safe and could be offer intrauterine contraception to adolescents. Is not difficult to insert. The difference between young people and nulliparous are not so deep, not higher comparing with multiparous women. The rate of failed insertion is similar. The pain is not heavy, it's similar, and the young woman will feel very satisfied about it. And the rate of expulsion is not different. What is mean not different? It means that is slightly increase for adolescents and for nulliparous women, but is different between young woman and nulliparous woman and multiple woman is a different that don't have any kind of statistic significance. So if you use in a multiparous, it's quite safe to use it in adolescents or nulliparous woman. It's quite safe and is quite easy to insert. If the woman wants, could be an option. Other problem and other needs or other fear, it's about TVT. So we have what means thromboembolic risk. We have thromboembolic risk in people that are not hormonal contraception users. But what this means? It means 2 or 3 women per 10,000. So we can leave, even us that are gynecologists and many work in family planning, we can spend all professional life without seeing anyone with this kind of events. So it's quite rare. And when you look to the pregnancy, the risk of TVT is increased so much, and we never say to a woman, it's better to not be pregnant because the TVT risk will increase. And when we say the risk of hormonal contraception user increased, the risk of TVT increased with the use of contraception, hormonal contraception, what this means? Increase the double or 3 times, but it means less than 10 women per 10,000. So the risk is quite low in a global population. The relative risk increase, but in a global way is very small. For healthy people, it's quite safe. If the choice is using a hormonal contraceptive method, it's quite safe to start it. And I think all of us knows this discussion about the impact of the progestin in this risk, and it's the same language and the same dialogue. There's a difference between progestins but what means in reality. The differences are small, and the risk with use of hormonal contraception is increased 2 times, but it means less than 10 women per 30,000. Another important thing is we always see this discussion about low or increase or higher doses of hormonal contraceptives. And when you look at TVT risk, the risk is not different when you look with a pill of 20 or 30 micrograms of estradiol. Another important thing about the numbers is the same kind of dialogue that we have to thromboembolic risk. A few years ago, there's a lot of press really related with the risk with impact in the mood of hormonal contraception. And you know that combined hormonal contraception are the most used method in Europe. And so what we are doing to the woman, especially to the young woman, this is a still open discussion. It came time to time like the thromboembolic discussion, but it's the same thing about numbers. What it means, what is the increasing risk? But it takes a lot of magazines discussing this, and the people and the women are afraid of using hormonal contraception, especially in young, and some of the women stop the hormonal contraception. And the discussions comes with this because until 2016, the majority of the studies, this doesn't find, some of the studies find some difference between user and not user regarding the incidence of depression. But in 2016, there's a large study from Lidgard, and everyone was worried about the risk of depression that increased, especially in young people. But what means increase? Increase, it means less than 2 women per 1,000 of women. And when the studies say what about adolescents, and it seems that in adolescents the risks are higher, but when you look what this risk is in fact very slow in a global healthy population of young adolescents. So there's a lot of discussion around this paper of Lidgard, this study of Lidgard. Bitzer was already discussed in the European Journal of the Society about this study of Lidgard. But what was in fact is that study has an impact, and some of the women stopped the contraceptive pills like we saw in the past with the thromboembolic risk. And what we realize is that the depression is a multifactorial disease, and what we see in reality is that in healthy people, the majority of the healthy people, the impact of hormonal contraception is not higher, but in some people more vulnerable, in fact, the risk could increase. But what it means is not a contraindication, it's not a limitation. It means that the provider must advert the woman about this kind of risk. I use some of these slides from the TT course, so if the colleagues want, they can find it in the website of European Society of Contraception and use it during the teaching classes, because it will be easier for you. And all these slides have an explanation about this kind of risks. So the language will be similar and not alarmist and clear about the numbers. And in fact, what we see and what we know about hormonal contraception, combined hormonal contraception, is that in healthy people, this is completely safe contraceptions and options. What about progestin-only people, only contraceptive? Could be a little different, but it's not a barrier like in combined hormonal contraception for healthy women, and maybe it's not the first choice for women with a story or with the past of psychiatric disease. After that, some of the studies came about this topic, about the risk of hormonal contraception in youth. And in fact, some of us have the perception that the hormonal contraception have an impact in the mood on some women. When you look at the studies, the number between user and not user are not different. So it's safe to use, but always like in contraception, we can leave an open door if the woman has some kind of complaints, in special with POP. Okay, the last paper that I find related with the topic say that it's safer to use this kind of contraception. A clinical story is very important, the age, the personal story about psychiatric disease, then as I said before. And we have to choose well what kind of combined hormonal contraceptive we will choose, and of course leave an open door for the woman. Another important discussion is about weight. Is a worry about two providers, and is the first worry for a woman. The first question normally is, I will increase my height. Of course, we don't like, but the age increase and the weight increase. It's two terrible things that happen, but it's the reality. In a majority of the people, hormonal contraception doesn't have an impact in weight. Combined hormonal contraception don't have an impact on weight. But if you don't control any other kind of risk factors, of course, the weight will increase. Some of the studies say that the progestin-only pill, only contraceptive, have more impact in weight than combined hormonal contraceptives. There's the last study from Belkinska that came in 2020 and came to say that a huge difference between the users of the Depo-Provera implant and the copper intrauterine system and a intrauterine device. But Luis Barramont, that have published WHO's big study related with this topic, came and said that is the follow-up of this study that finds this kind of difference was small. It was one year of follow-up. And the study that Luis have already published on topic, that was a big study with 3 years of follow-up, didn't find any kind of difference. So contraception option is always a balance between risk and benefits, but it's very important that we as providers use a clear language, clarify the numbers, and participate in the information or the internet of our users, women and men, and to contribute to clarify all this kind of misconception about contraception. Thank you, and welcome to Ghent.
Well, thank you very much, Teresa, for this excellent talk. I think we are very grateful that you are summarizing again all the evidence which is around these different issues regarding risk-benefit counseling. And I think we've we've learned a lot again. And it shows that this is an ongoing business, really, to go on and make studies, and especially that we can follow cohorts over a longer period of time, as we do usually in public health, because contraception actually, and that's maybe the big challenge, is a public health issue, a little bit like vaccination. And we have to translate a lot of epidemiological data into daily practice. And this is a big challenge, as we can see also with vaccination, by the way. Okay. So
if Johannes agrees, I would really, again, thank to Massimo. And some questions arrived regarding and related to his presentation. And I would like to start with the question of Niklas Envall, who thinks about, asks you if you can go in more detail regarding the methodology of Tanko and Coco studies, because he is not familiar with these studies, and he wonders if the results of these two studies are comparable. So can you explain us a little bit more?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a very good one. First of all, Tanko is more European study. Coco is more national, somewhat German related. And the approach to the questions is a little bit different, but the questionnaire is comparable. So we can say the approach in Tanko, for example, was to compare the results, the answers of the patients related to the doctor, so the same one. And in Coco, it was mere an estimation of a discussion of the results of a huge amount of more than 1,000 women which were interviewed, but with similar questionnaires. So I compared a little bit the questions, not so much the studies themselves.
Because if I may add, the Coco study is basically an intervention study.
Yeah, this is what I meant.
Looking into a specific intervention, using, but as Massimo has said, using sort of the same basic questions, and whether there is a change then after the intervention. Mm-hmm.
So, yes, thank you, Massimo. And another question from Melina Caston-Kay is about the high levels of induced abortion you spoke about. But she wonders, and she would like you to clarify, because your slide was not so clear explaining that. So illustrating.
That's true. That. No, I said it's a 3 years high. So we had a continuously decrease of induced abortions. This data are related to Germany, but are comparable to Europe, what I saw. So we had a decrease of induced abortions up to the years 12, 13. In this point, we arrived to a low, and then we started to rise again. And now we are, compared to the years 12, to this low, we are gaining highness. So we are having more cases and more cases. And this 3 years high started with this groups I identified as the millennials or the Generation X, because they are now in the age 18 to 22, more or less. And this group seems to be very willing not to accept unmet pregnancies, and they are willing to do everything. We have done, for example, a real-time interview. So we had run about 5,000 answers by having the chance to discussed this item with influencers in Germany, in Austria, and in Switzerland, and we had a response of more or less 5,000 girls. What would you do in case of an unmet pregnancy? At 41% and answered at once, I would do an induced abortion. So they are not willing to accept, to follow a possible unmet pregnancy and say, okay, good, in this case I will be a mom, but they say, no, my goals in life are more important, so I stop this pregnancy and I want to have the completely control of my reproductivity. And this slide showed that we have a break in 2012, more or less, and now we are starting to go up, but we are now absolutely in this, and therefore the question is the right one. We are much lower than in 1970 or 1980, but we are starting to go up.
Okay, thank you. Would somebody, maybe Johannes, comment on this? So
yeah, I think we recently also had this discussion in Switzerland that although there is such a rather high resistance towards hormonal contraception, especially in adolescents, fortunately, the number of registered unwanted pregnancies did not increase as much as we had feared, but maybe this is still coming. But I agree with Massimo. What happens seems to be there is no more advance, and we are a little bit concerned that it may still go up again. But at least, which is clear, it's not going down. Yeah.
I think that it means also that the social and psychological price of having induced abortion is lowering in a way,
yeah.
because people are not reluctant to undergo induced abortion
yeah.
and to have an unplanned pregnancy. So, and another question is maybe important for the full contraceptive choice, and it is the question of Marjorie Gomez. Why are women's condoms not sold at the stores, and why are they so expensive? I don't know if Massimo can answer to that question.
I can answer.
But maybe our colleague wanted to share that she thinks it is a problem, and I suppose that it is a problem in all European countries as well.
Maybe give it over to Teresa. I think she's more appropriate.
The problem about condoms is it's a problem in the majority of the European countries, because in fact condoms are contraceptive methods, but are methods for protecting this sexual transmitted disease, and it's important to make it more accessible, especially for young and especially for young people. And it's different between countries, because imagine in South countries like Portugal and Spain, where a condom, in Spain, for example, condom is one of the first most used methods, and we can buy it in supermarkets or in everywhere you can buy it. And it's not cheaper, of course, but you can buy it everywhere. In some countries, not true, but in other countries like Portugal, we can have condoms in national health system for free, and we have condoms free in special for special groups in special situations, like association of young people. Woman that works with sex, and a man that works with sex. So we have free access to condoms in that kind of groups. But in fact, I think we as a scientific society, we can do something about it, like, make some recommendation about the prices, or how this kind of contraceptive are accessible nowadays.
But I agree with the question of Marjorie was about women's condoms.
Women
yes.
condoms.
Female.
Like, but I think women condoms is the same as maybe not in your country, but Here, the places of selling are the same, but of course the prices is double from the men condoms.
Can I add something, Katarina and Johannes, if you allow? We don't have to forget something. So condoms, femidoms are very important in the sense of avoiding sexually transmitted disease and all this, but they are not very. We shouldn't rely on condoms for anti-conception in the middle or in a long acting sense, because we have a terrifying bad Pearl index, and the condoms for me shows a kind of the people loses the contact to the HEPs, to the because it's you can buy condoms everywhere.
Yes.
You don't have to have an advice somewhere, and this is sometimes feels easier for the girls to face their needs in contraception, but it doesn't. It's not the result is not the one we want to have, because the result is often seen in the unmet pregnancies. So condoms should be for STIs very important, but in the end, it's not to see as a good acting, or in the sense long acting anti-conception. It's not possible to use it like this. It was my comment on this case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have also two questions. I'm not sure if Massimo or Teresa can address them. One is about the different questions to ask in counseling. And another is about it is Leslie Bacon that I think that it is more common. She says that healthcare staff, it is not only to teach healthcare staff, but that they have also their attitudes regarding contraception, regarding sexual orientation or sexual experiences, as well as some religious beliefs. So it is very, very complicated to address all these issues in lectures, maybe in some workshops more.
But I think it may be really important that there are these recommendations regarding sexual health, including into contraception, of course, because it's about sexual health. And this is the famous 5 Ps, I think. You know, do you have a partner? What are your practices? And I think this is, do you have different partners? And to be honest, I don't believe that this is very well established in our consultations.
Yeah.
And this is also maybe something where our society, which is a society for sexual and reproductive health, should help to introduce this more easily. And because many people still think that asking questions about do you have a male partner or a female partner would be too intrusive, or do you have different partners? That I think in many contexts, in many countries, it may well be that people would regard this as too intimate, and would be afraid to ask these questions. So it might be important to teach them how to introduce the whole subject, that it is important, and that this is are important questions for in the context of contraception. Yeah.
Maybe the question was related to the results of the COCO study and the 6 questions. Could it be that the question was related to this? Because the questions in the COCO study to address and to face exactly the problem, Johannes, you said, to bring the informations, the facts clearly there without going too deep too personally, and the questions, maybe I can repeat them because I only showed the slide without talking about these 6 questions. So it's the first one is, when do you want a possible next pregnancy? So this is really important to see how will be your life in the next years, to see should it be a short acting or a long acting anti-conception, then how important it is for you not to be pregnant right now, how important is the Pearl index, what is your current method of contraception, and how satisfied are you with this? So why do you want to change, which motivation you have in changing this? And the 5th question is, what do you want to happen to your period? Because we saw which influence the period, heavy menstrual bleedings, dysmenorrhea have on the social life of women. And so this is really important to bring this issue there. And the 6th question is there anything else, so an open questions, your doctor should do or be aware of you and your lifetime now? So to give the girl the possibility to give you an open answer. And these 6 questions help really to come near to the needs without having this problem of being too personal, exactly like Johannes said.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there are more questions. Maybe Johannes, would you like to address them?
Yeah, there are interesting questions. A very clinical one: which method of contraception is safe for women of reproductive age with metabolic syndrome? Would be one issue, and the other would be women with anemia. Teresa, would you like to answer?
Yes,
that?
I think
for
people with metabolic syndrome, I think we can use a progestin only contraceptive is quite safe. You can use it oral or implant or intrauterine device. But if you have a woman with metabolic syndrome and anemia related with the high volume of menstruation, you can use an intrauterine system because it's the first line for contraception and treatment of menorrhagia in women with heavy menstrual bleeding.
Well, I think the question was obviously a little bit towards the situation in metabolic syndrome. Can we still use hormonal contraceptives? And in women with anemia, can we still use copper IUD in case that we cannot use hormonal contraceptive? But I think you answered the question that when it comes to a patient with heavy menstrual bleeding, the LNG IUD would be an option and not the copper IUD. And the Cecilia, the one who answered the question, she suggested that in metabolic syndrome, the first choice would be a copper IUD, which I think there are good arguments. Good arguments.
It depends of the wishes of the woman, and how she deals with the impact of in the menstruation of the intrauterine system. If for her will be comfortable have an impact in menstrual cycle, I think intrauterine system could be the first line. Imagine if we are in Portugal, intrauterine system will be the first choice and not copper IUD, because for us the use of hormones, it's quite comfortable, and but I think it depends of the culture and how the people deal with the fear of hormones. But I think the main question is maybe the first choice will be not a hormonal contraceptive combined, a progestin only contraceptive. It will be safe.
Yeah. Of course, I would excuse me. I would a little bit disagree in the point, not with Teresa, but with Cecilia, because only copper IUD in case of a metabolic syndrome, because this would suggest that the LNG would have a systemical relevance as this is not true. I think an LNG would be possible in a metabolic syndrome as well as copper. So there is no differentiation.
And I would also add that it depends on other factors. It depends on the age of woman. If a girl is 20 or 25, she can benefit of combined hormonal contraception. And I am not sure that there are contraindications to use if she has metabolic syndrome. So we cannot, I think, answer in a simple way. So we need to weigh up all benefits and risks. And
especially if the patient, if patient has hyperandrogenic signs and symptoms, then you have to make a very good balance and
we need to reduce androgens.
Then we have the other suggestion from Brazil, I think Juliana Meio Função Lopes. Bom dia. She is mentioning that increasing the number of nurses and midwives that are able to insert IUD and implant can improve the access to women to effective contraception. As a question, would that be an important strategy? In Brazil, we see some resistance to the nurses that are trying to work in this area. So the question is, are these important larks regarding the insertion and also the removal, are these interventions limited to physicians, or should it be broadened? I think in Northern Europe it is already established, at least for the IUDs. I don't think for implants that nurses and midwives can do it. I don't know. What do you think in other countries? I think in Germany it's not used. In Portugal probably also not. Maybe it's an interesting question. Should we advocate it, and what would be the conditions of training that would be necessary to ensure that there are no problems?
I can give experience of Portugal.
Yeah.
We have this discussion now. Should nurses that are working in family planning groups could insert implants and intrauterine system? The professional group of nurses say yes, they can do it with proper training, and the medical orders say no. It's an invasive, the introduction is invasive, and it's only allowed to do by doctors. Okay, what we decide is that it's not closed, but we have in our country, because family planning is based on family planning is based in primary health centers, where we have medical we have doctors trained for that. So this is the first step of approach, and intrauterine system and implants but must be inserted by a doctor. If you go to some areas of the country where a doctor is not accessible, so we could train a nurse to do it. But we train nurses on counseling, and in that situation we can train nurses for do it, but it's not a current practice.
I can see now that we have an enormous amount of questions coming in. I will try to, if I can, sort of find different themes. One theme is about IUDs, that the pain of insertion is underrated and underreported, and that there is still a need of making IUDs and especially the insertion more comfortable. And in this context, the ballerine, how is it called? The round one is mentioned, but there is also the comment from Helena that there is a lack of good studies, that this intrauterine device was registered without larger studies. So I think that would be one subject. Do we need advances in better tolerated IUDs and insertion? What are your thoughts? Are we good with what we have, or do we need advances in different types, and especially advances in the insertion procedure? Because as one of the comments was, saying that it is not painful is quite courageous.
Maybe we again go to, excuse me, to the counseling issue, because I think that it is very important to have a good contact between the doctor who provides insertion and the patient. Would you comment, Massimo?
Yeah, would be very happy to do this. The question is not to answer in one way. First, to see it from the side of the doctor, of the AGP, I think we saw in different studies, and we can report this from running studies we are doing in Germany, that the pains are related to the expertise of the colleague who is doing the insertion. So when you have a highly expertise colleague who is doing a lot of insertions a year, for example, we have in Germany an average of insertions by gynecologists of around about 20 to 30 insertions a year. This is not really a lot. But when you have people who inserts 20, 30 IUS or IUDs in a month, it's a different kind of ability. And we see this in the studies, that this kind of ability is related one-to-one to the pains that are reported by the patients. The second aspect is the preparation, like you say, the counseling. It's really important to understand that it's not only a problem of pains, because unfortunately women are used to pains since their early days in life. So they started with the first menstruation bleedings, ovulation, don't talk about the birth. So we girls are used to manage pains. It's the opposite to us male ones here. So we often it's not only a problem of the pains, but it's often a problem of the fears. And we see this very often, that the girls have such a high panic before the insertion. After this, they say, okay, good, there was no pain or at all, or very, very less pain, and the fear was much higher. I think a good possibility to manage the situation is, and next to the fact to do a good atmosphere, to be kind and to have a good contact to the patient, is a system which is used very often, and I'm quite sure lots of you know this, is the ultrasound assisted insertion. And this is what we do. And this gives you two good points. The first one, I give, for example, the ultrasound in the hand of the patient themselves. So they are holding this on their belly during the insertion. So this gives the girl the possibility to be part of it.
Can we shorten a little bit?
Yes.
Because
I finished now. Only with this one.
We have one subject I would really like to address, because it comes up here, that when we talk about very effective contraception and reducing the rate of abortion, we have to be careful that we are not making the voice for anti-abortionists, you know. And I think I fully agree with the comments saying that access to abortion is the very important part of the whole family planning and contraception activities. Yeah. So I think we would all agree on that. Then the question came up again with the PCO. We have discussed this, as women with hyperandrogenic skin symptoms could be profit from combined hormonal contraception. Another question coming up is addressed to Teresa. how often can emergency contraception be used?
With levonorgestrel, we can repeat in the same cycle. It's safe. With UPA, it's not completely clear that we can repeat it in the same cycle. But what means that in the same cycle a woman repeats emergency contraception? It means that the plan of contraception for that woman is not completely effective. So we must discuss with us the future in a contraceptive method.
I think the question was more, can I do it as a continuous method of contraception?
No, it's not so effective. It's not so effective. It's not so effective as a contraceptive method than when you use another kind of contraceptive in a continuous way.
Well, I think I don't think that we have studies. For example, in a cohort of women who have rare intercourse and who would, yeah, basically you're of course right, but I don't think we have very good studies.
Okay. Yes, I agree with you.
Specific women.
We don't have very good studies for the index pearl, but we accept that. Of course, you can have this discussion if a woman have 4 times per year or 5, or imagine, I don't know, a few number of sexual intercourse, if maybe it's easier for them for using this emergency contraception that regular contraceptive. Of course, we can discuss this in this kind of situation, but not as a regular method, daily use or.
May I comment
yes,
just a moment, because I'm coming from a country that has a huge rate of women who use postcoital contraception, and then there is the belief that you should use it twice a year and not more, because you can ruin your health. And of course, it is not true. I think that it should be available to all women at all circumstances they are faced with the possibility or high risk of unplanned pregnancy. Of course, not as a regular method. And there was a method called Postinor. It was 0.75 milligrams of levonorgestrel, and it was very frequently used in Eastern European countries some 30 years ago. And there are some studies from the recent period of pericoital use for 4 times per month of this contraceptive method for women who don't have frequent or regular sexual intercourse. These studies show not so satisfying Pearl index, but anyway, women are satisfied. So maybe I would encourage Johannes to have more studies on that issue.
Okay, we're approaching, it's getting dark, and we're approaching our end of time, which is 5:30, I believe. There are still some very interesting questions. One about, contraception in obese women, where they have a higher risk of endometrial carcinoma. So it would be a good thing to protect the endometrium. There are, again, other questions about the teaching of other professionals in providing LARCs. I think we have looked into that. We have looked into EC, and there is, I think, one other question. I'm sorry, a very clinical question about breast cancer risk in hormonal contraceptives. Can you give a short answer to that, Teresa, or does anybody want to give a short answer to?
Yes, I can give a short answer. When we look at the numbers, we know that the woman, it's accepted that women who have breast cancer in the past are not eligible for hormonal contraception. Now, there are a few studies going for hormonal contraception in that woman, but now it's accepted that women with the past, yes.
Sorry, it's not about women with breast cancer, but the risk of breast cancer in hormone.
The risk of the breast cancer. Healthy woman with the risk of the breast cancer. Yeah. The answer is quite similar to the answer with about thromboembolic risk and impact in mood. Of course, the women who use hormonal contraception have a higher risk than the women are not users. But this higher risk is not more than one woman in the group of the users. So the risk relative increase, but the global risks are quite low, and the benefits are higher than the risk. In practical ways, imagine, even in a woman with a family story of breast cancer, like BRCA positive woman, it's safe to use hormonal contraception.
And I think what is also important in counseling from the Marchbank study, that the small risk increase disappears 5 years after stopping, and it's not transferred to later age. And I think in the cancer context, it's really important to inform women that combined hormonal contraceptive protect on a lifelong basis against endometrium carcinoma and ovarian carcinoma. Also something which is really important for women's health.
You know, what I think about this kind of risk is we have risk in our life. And hormonal contraception, it's a medication, of course, if you have risk, but advantages are higher than the risk. And when we have to take care ourselves as provider, when we say the risk increased 2 times, but what means 2 times? It's the majority of the situation is not more one woman in a universe of 10,000. So it doesn't mean anything. It's a good exercise of experience for studies, but in a real world, what it means for the people. In the majority of the situation, I think it doesn't mean, don't have any real impact, but in a newspaper could be dangerous.
Well, I think it's absolutely true that statistical significance is the issue of public health. And clinical significance is the issue of good clinical practice. Which has also much to do with what, the picture of the whole life and the whole complex. So are we
continue talking, or are we going?
No,
there's a lot of questions around here.
There are a lot of questions. I think what we can do is we try to answer this later. Put it. Maybe Peter can confirm that. But I got nice feedback. Thank you. Here, a lot of people are saying thank you, which is nice. Thank you very much. Von Peter bis zum Host and confirmed work for the speakers. Yeah, I don't understand exactly what that means, but I think it looks like we are coming to an end. I thank you all very, very much, the speakers, the participants. I think it shows that we have to continue to be in contact with each other, to exchange our knowledge, because there are ongoing important questions and it's never completely resolved. So, this is, of course, also to encourage you to become a member of European Society of Contraception. Thanks again.
And to read European Journal of Contraception as well.
Yeah, to read the European Journal of Contraception.
There are nice studies.
Yeah. There was one critical comment on the Tanko study, which which I think, of course, this was in the context of clinics, and I don't think we can say it is completely representative for the general practitioner. Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Peter, can we? Yeah. So, thanks a lot, and I hope we see you all in Ghent or in any other place or the next webinar. Bye-bye.
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 Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.